It was kind of an anti-establishment vote. You look at Donald Trump being elected against all the mainstream odds, if you're that way inclined. I think most people expected Hillary Clinton, and the mainstream media certainly pushed for Clinton to be elected. So in terms of that, do you think it's a genuine shift, or do you think it could be the case that we've been sold a pup, in a sense, and that Trump maybe isn't as genuine as he seems to be in terms of being anti-establishment? I mean, I've been looking at some of his cabinet appointments with interest there.
The reason so many voted for Trump against all the odds was not because of what Trump is. Trump is not going to drain the swamp. He's standing in it. What got him the support was the perception that he was an anti-establishment, the perception that he was for the, if you like, the common man, as people wrongly call themselves. That was the, if you like, the barometer of where people were at in terms of why they voted for him. But as I said, on the very day that he was elected, they're all going to be very disappointed because he's not what he seemed to be. But in terms of, like I say, a barometer on the public mood, the fact that they voted for someone they thought was outside the establishment was very much in line with the mentality and the motivations behind Brexit. But of course, as you rightly say, since that day he was elected, the swamp drainer has just got the hose pipe out and started filling it.
Yeah.
And the most significant thing, and I think most people are missing this when they're getting pulled into other things, the most important aspect of Trump is that he is 100% owned by Israel, owned in his mind as well as possibly, probably literally. Because if you look at his appointments, he has handed the American economy to Zionists. He's handed it to Steve Mnuchin as Treasury Secretary, Goldman Sachs' longtime partner. He's handed it to Gary Cohn, president of Goldman Sachs, who he's made director of his National Economic Council. The Federal Reserve chief, which is obviously massively influential in the American economy, is Janet Yellen, who's a Zionist, and her vice chairman is Stanley Fischer, who is the former governor of the Bank of Israel. And then you look at his ambassador to Israel, a right-wing zealot called David Friedman, really right out there, so far right he needs himself coming back. Jason Greenblatt, he's made his international negotiator, another extreme right-wing Zionist, and international negotiations in all areas of trade, etc., but also in negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. So, you know, whether Trump won or whether Clinton won was basically irrelevant to the long-term picture. But there are differences that will make the detail different. For instance, Trump is wanting to get better relations with Russia, whereas Clinton, without question in my mind, would have taken us into war with Russia. That's where it was all building up. And you've got Donald Trump, if he sticks with it, because I call him President Two Mouths. He says one thing and then says another and then does a third.
Yeah.
But if he sticks with it, then it's going to be more difficult for the global warming hoax to be played out with the speed that they want it to be, because the global warming hoax is there to justify a complete transformation of human society. So they would be good things if they came about. But on the other hand, I think another key word in the Trump presidency is Iran. He's made statements about Iran that are not complimentary.
Yeah.
He's put in to the Pentagon as defense secretary this guy with the extraordinary nickname Mad Dog Mattis, who's publicly said how much he enjoys killing people, what fun it is. He is vehemently anti-Iran. He's got this guy, Michael Flynn, another military man, as national security advisor, who is vehemently anti-Iran. And then you've got Israel and Netanyahu, a close friend of Trump, who is vehemently anti-Iran and wants a strike on Iran, in truth. Because if you remember, in September 2000, when the Zionist dominated organization Project for the New American Century laid out, in effect, what it wanted the incoming Bush administration to do. It may, and then many of its members became the Bush administration, people like Cheney and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz and so on. It laid out a series of countries in which it wanted regime change.
Yeah.
And of course, they've been ticked off. Iraq, Libya, Syria, that's gone pear-shaped for them at the moment, thank goodness. But the major one on the list, or a major one on the list, was Iran. And this is why they were all kicking off over this nuclear agreement with Iran, because that's not the idea, to have good relations with Iran. So when you look at that from the Trump point of view, I think that's going to be a key word, Iran, as well as Israel. And of course, we've already seen the other word, which is China. I mean, this guy's not even in office and he's kicked off a row with China. And when you see where it came from, which was a phone call conversation he had with the leader of Taiwan, and I'm not taking sides over this Taiwan-China conflict, what I am saying is the idea that phone call was an accident and just, quote, happened is ludicrous. It was done on purpose. Yeah. Calculatedly on purpose to trigger what happened, which was this rift with China, and he's not even in office yet. So bringing the question around to a kind of summary, I think Brexit was an expression of how so many people now feel about the establishment and centralized imposition. And I think Trump was the same, except they miscalculated what Trump is. He's not anti-establishment. He's just another classic guy who sat down with his advisors and worked out what his natural constituency of support was and what he had to tell that constituency of support to get it to vote for him. And that's what happened. And now, of course, before he's even close to going in, although it's getting closer now, he's done exactly the opposite with his appointments that he said he was going to do. Almost exactly the opposite, not in every case.
There are really two sides to every coin, aren't there, when we're talking about the so-called global elite or the powers that shouldn't be?
Yeah, there are. There is emphasis in detail with different people, but you've got to look at the main thrust. I mean, don't let anyone be surprised that Trump is going back on what he said he stood for, because we have a fantastic example with Barack Obama.
Yeah, exactly.
No one could have claimed that he was going to be different, that he was about change more than him. I mean, it was repetitive to the point of boredom. But he came in and did exactly what he said he wouldn't do. Now, this is another point I think is very important, because in the end, it's all a psychological game. It's all psychology. It's all coming from perception. The whole thing's perception at incredibly deep levels that are usually not discussed. So if you look at what happened with Barack Obama, I was in America talking in the run-up to it, and I remember speaking in Los Angeles one evening at a place called the $1 Million Theater. In downtown Los Angeles. And the big progressive, not least in California, what are called progressives, euphoria was at its peak, because this man Obama was going to come in and he was going to change everything. And I, as part of this presentation this night, I said the opposite. I said, he's not. He's just another mask on the same face, and he's just telling you what you want to hear, so they can get in, and then it will be business as usual. And you could have heard a pin drop, to say the least, because it wasn't what most people there wanted to hear, but it was obvious that's what he was, because in the end, I mean, just look at this. Just like the Clintons, Donald Trump doesn't have skeletons in the cupboard. He has whole cemeteries, right? If they wanted to destroy him, they could have destroyed him. They didn't destroy him.
Yeah.
The Republican Party could have destroyed him. They didn't destroy him. So I don't buy this any of this outsider stuff. Not least after seeing his appointments. But what happened with Obama is, although he came in and did not stand for what he said he would stand for, that took America into catastrophic attacks on Libya, the consequences of which have been horrific for Libyans, and the same in Syria. Where was the anti-war movement that had gathered so much pace during the Bush administration? Nowhere. Because where did the anti-war movement come from? Basically, from an area of perception and belief that people call progressives, the very groups that supported Obama, and in investing in Obama, that belief that he was going to do what he said and was what he claimed to be, and also investing their almost reputation in that that's what he was going to be, it meant that he got this free ride in places like Libya and Syria that boy George Bush would never have got. And it's gone on. He's going out of office now, basically unchallenged by that constituency that would have challenged Bush had he done the same. Now, when I look at Donald Trump now, John, I see the same process. You know, a significant part of the alternative media, well, it calls itself alternative, in the United States, has got behind Trump. And pushed and pushed and pushed and promoted him. Now, for me, you know, I've been in this arena for a very long time, and for me, in fact, there was no arena when I started out. The alternative media is not there to take political sides. It's there to question everything, and it's there to point out that it's the system and how it works and what is behind it in the shadows that is driving world events and the direction of the world. Once you start jumping on one political side, first of all, you're accepting that politics makes any fundamental difference, which it doesn't. It's there to stop any fundamental difference being made. But you lose your perspective. Suddenly, instead of exposing what someone has done, like, for instance, hey, Mr. Trump, I thought you said you were going to drain the swamp. What about your economic team? What about this? What about that? No, there's no discernment going on among that part of the alternative media anymore. They're mirroring, John, what the progressives did with Obama. And therefore, Trump can do no wrong. Even when he does blatantly opposite things to what he said, they find an excuse for him. And what I've found also is this. Since Trump has started coming out, vehemently supporting Israel, and very, very clearly making statements about moving the embassy, American embassy, to Jerusalem, which, of course, is a tremendously relevant and symbolic with Palestinians. When they've seen this, they've started coming out and supporting Israel in an unquestioning way. It's extraordinary. We're seeing the right version of what people call the left with Obama when he came in. And if we, the alternative media, are going to be alternative, we have to be beyond the political puppet show. We have to expose it for what it is, a manipulated irrelevance. But I think, you know, the thing is, if you can only see the 5 sense world, that's all you can perceive as real, as existing, then all your answers to your perceived 5 sense problems must come from the 5 sense realm. And if you won't go deep into the nature of consciousness, deep into the nature of perception manipulation, then, you know, if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And what happens in the end when you're looking for answers and solutions to what you perceive to be 5 sense problems is 5 sense solutions. So you talk about stockpiling weapons to fight the enemy, or you get pulled back into the political system on the basis of this guy's different to the others. That's what happened with Obama. That's what's happened with Trump. And you know, there is, I think, coming, and I think it's already happening, there is a reevaluation among what constitutes alternative media. And Trump supporting Trump apologists are not the alternative media. They are at best mainstream light. And what we are looking at now with this great fake news hoax, which came out of nowhere, always watch when something comes out of nowhere and suddenly everywhere, is they're using basically what the mainstream media do, which is fake stories. But we need to be honest, there are parts of the alternative media that do the same. The clickbait alternative media, that's not alternative at all. It's just parasitical on those that are genuine. That they are using that to target the genuine alternative media, which they're terrified of. That which has integrity, that which is looking for facts, that's looking for what's really going on, rather than taking sides in the political spectrum.
And do you think then the establishment response to the likes of Brexit and Trump and other various bits and pieces that have gone on over the last 12 months has been indicative of any kind of panic on their part? Do you think that they are oblivious to what's going on? Do they think maybe it's a blip in their grand master plan? And how do you think they will react if it is something that they notice and aren't arrogant enough to ignore?
Well, I do think they are concerned, absolutely, because and this is where this big out of nowhere fake news hoax comes from, and using it as an excuse to by people like Facebook, you know, the T-shirt that doesn't run Facebook, to censor alternative information and to give fact-checking control to some of the worst fake news operations in the world, including the Washington Post. So this, you see, when you're dealing with a perception deception, if you're going to control people's perception so that they suit you because of what people will therefore then accept, what they won't accept, what they will do and what they won't do, etc., you have to control the information they receive, because that's where perceptions come from. You know, you can have information in the form of a personal experience, or you could have information as someone reading something on the news. It's all information through which we construct our perceptions. And what the alternative media has done over the years is to put before people, like never before, information that says you can look at the world in another way as well, you know, not just what the BBC tells you or the government tells you. There's another way of looking at it. And because this information is so powerful, it's had a powerful effect. And you know, I'm contacted all the time by people and people I meet in the street and stuff who say, I can't believe it, you know, people I never thought would open their minds to anything are now hearing a news story and saying, well, I bet it's that, you know, I can't believe it. You're saying that, whoa. So it has had this effect, and they are concerned about it. You know, they wouldn't be trying to shut out the alternative media in the way that they currently are, because they think it's a bit of fun. They're doing it because they think it's necessary. So that's a sign in itself that they are concerned. And see, there's two things that have brought this about, because it's a psychological game. One is control of information, and two is the fact that people will not question that information. You put those two together and you get the information equaling the perceptions of the people. What the alternative media has done is to show that there are other ways of looking at the world, and that there is a need to question what we were told before, because it's not necessarily the truth. And so, you know, they are realizing that the world for them is not like it was before. They can't get away with what they could before in the numbers that they could before. So it's good stuff. I mean, you know, I take it as a compliment when people try to suppress it, because they only suppress it because they're frightened of it.